Okay, let's get into Philosopher's Stone then.
Let's do it.
So, a bit of preamble. We all know it, but I do it just in case somebody has lived under a rock and for some reason is going to my podcast as, what's Harry Potter about?
So if someone's been living in a cupboard under the stairs for...
Yes, there you go. Oh,
now
right.
we've started.
With peaks. So, directed by Christopher Columbus, as we know, distributed by Warner Brothers, based on J.K. Rowling's 1997 novel of the same name, which it always surprises me that it was 97. I feel like it was much sooner than that. Don't tell me this is 24 years old. Like, what's happening here?
Well, the film was 2001, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
that's 20 years
Oh,
old this year.
It's aging us all. Produced by David Heyman, screenplay by Steve Kloves. Obviously, the first installment of the Harry Potter franchise. It features Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter, Rupert Grint as Ron Weasley, Emma Watson as Hermione Granger, and Harry Potter's first year at Hogwarts as he discovers that he's a famous wizard and begins his education. Warner Brothers brought the film rights to the book in 1999 for a reported £1 million, which I feel like they got a bargain there. It's for the first one, anyway. I think it might have a little bit after that.
Yeah.
Production began in the UK in 2000, with Chris Columbus being chosen to direct the film from a shortlist of directors that also included Steven Spielberg and Rob Reiner. J.K. Rowling insisted that the entire cast be British, with the 3 leads chosen in the August of 2000, and it was then shot at Leavesden Film Studios, as we've already mentioned, which is now converted into the fantastic Harry Potter Studio Tour. Released on the 16th of November 2001, massive success. It grossed 974 million at the box office worldwide and over $1 billion with subsequent re-releases. Highest grossing film of 2001, second highest gross of the film, a film at the time, and it was nominated for many awards, including an Oscar for Best Original Score, Art Direction, and Costume Design. This one takes me right back to childhood instantly. I think I'd seen this in the cinema a good 4 or 5 times, and I think it was a combination of my auntie and my uncle got preview tickets. They took us, and then we went with school. We went with my mum. We went with my dad. We like, I think my grandparents took me as well at some point. It's cliche. It's cliche to say, but this is just magic because it's that childlike wonder of starting secondary school for the first time, making new friends, the curiosity, the searching for your independence, and I think we'll go into kind of specific set pieces. But for me, the final act of Fluffy, the Devil's Bane, the Flying Keys, the Wizard Chest, the showdown with Quirrell and Voldemort. That was one of the first times I think I'd seen a film where it's like, this is exciting. This is an exciting kids film in the cinema. You know, this is gonna be a whole new thing for me. Like, I've read the first book, and I think I've read the second book, but I've not read any past that. And I think the only reason why I read the first one, stabbing the heart straight off.
Oh. I can't.
I think I only read the first one actually because we did it in English. I feel like it was a popular English choice in year 8 at that time. So you've read all the books then, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, so like I was born in 1994, and
Okay.
so everything we're about to talk about hit me at exactly the right age. So I remember being gifted, I think it was the first 3 books in like a pack at the time because they were the ones that had come out.
Yeah.
And yeah, devouring those, and then every subsequent book I had pre-ordered to arrive through my door on the day it came out. And usually by the end of the subsequent weekend, it was gone. It had been finished. But so when people, because I'm in film criticism, people often ask me what's the first film you saw at the cinema, and I don't know 100% what it was, but I always say Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Okay, because you would have been 7.
Yeah, 7-ish, and I'm sure I saw, like, I think I'd seen some of the Pokemon films in cinemas around that time. I think there was one that came out 2000 for the Millennium, and I think I saw that in the cinema. But the first cinema trip I can remember is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So it's so like formative for me as someone who's into films that, you know, that was the first thing I saw. And yeah, you're right, everything in it is magic. And I think Chris Columbus gets a really bad rap for those early Harry Potter films because I think they are brilliant. I think there's this idea that because they're not serious and they're not dark, that they are somehow lesser than, you know, particularly the middle run, which people quite like. But for me, they perfectly capture those books, because those first two books, yes, they do have dark moments, and the films do as well, but they are about escaping into this world of magic and exploring the various corners of it. That's what they're about, far more than even the characters. They're very much driven more by the world than by the characters in these early things, because as we meet them, all of the characters pretty much are archetypes in especially that first film.
Yeah, because I mean, I've written down here, so I made a lot of notes when I watched this again with my daughter Ruby, and we did it in October half term, so it's quite a while ago now, but it's all still fresh in my mind, and she's really taken to Harry Potter now, and I think it's more the first one. Although Chamber of Secrets gets a run every now and again because she likes the flying car at the beginning. She likes Harry's not necessarily like step anti blowing up at the start of Prisoner of Azkaban. So they get a run through every now and again. But I thought there was such strong acting from the child cast. I think it surprised me more this time round, maybe going in with a bit of an older head. My wife spotted that Ron is much more Cockney in the first film than he is later on. Hermione is much more posh and is trying really hard to insinuate everything.
Hermione, it's like, you have dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know?
Just there. It's so funny to see it when you know how it's going to end.
Yeah, incidentally, if at any point I devolve into just quoting lines from the film, please stop me. Because
it's fine.
Because I particularly those first two, I think I could probably do the script from memory. So
and as well, I remember playing the PlayStation 1 video game for this. So you get so much as well that you remember because you played it in the game and you did it over and over and over again.
I had the Chamber of Secrets game on probably the Game Boy Color at the time. It was either the Game Boy Color or the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember playing that. And I mean, these were the first films I had on video. The first two Harry Potters. I remember because the first one had a blue spine on the case all the way around. Yep. All of the early videos I had coloured boxes for some reason. I had Pokemon the first movie, which was in a yellow box. I had Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which was in blue, and Chamber of Secrets was in green, all the way around. So
I remember them doing that, actually, now that you've mentioned that. So I'm glad that you mentioned Chris Columbus, because Chris Columbus is somebody that, since I've been doing these podcasts, and we're coming on to a year now, as we've gone through, all of a sudden I've just began to realize that this guy, Christopher Columbus, has directed a lot of the films that I love. And we're going back to things like Home Alone, to Mrs. Doubtfire, even to Rent in 2005. And then you've got, the first couple of Harry Potter films. I think he must just be a master director of young audiences and young casts, I suppose, more specifically.
Yeah. You unforgivably left out the Christmas Chronicles there.
I don't think I've seen that.
In which Kurt Russell is the sexiest Santa Claus ever.
Oh, that's the Netflix thing, isn't it? Right, yeah, okay, right. I will write that one down just for sexy Kurt Russell. I think ultimately, and I think this can be said for all of the films, especially for the first two, it's so anchored on the fantastic supporting cast, which I think left, right, and centre, everyone is cast perfectly. Alan Rickman, Maggie Smith in this one, Richard Harris, Robbie Coltrane, they're all a must for the front and centre because they're anchoring that inexperienced main cast. And I think that actually, if it was just the main cast a lot on their own, which it feels like there are, but there are often scenes where you'll get one of these fantastic supporting actors just going in and giving them a little bit more gravitas. You believe everything that's happening. And I think for someone like Alan Rickman, Snape now is an iconic role. We've had the conversation recently on the podcast. Ollie, who is on and is our resident edgelord, who has a contrarian opinion to everybody else, thinks that Alan Rickman shouldn't have been Snape and that Hans Gruber is his best role and that it should have been Tim Roth instead. And while I can agree that I would love to have seen Tim Roth as Snape, just to see it, just to think, like, what would it have been differently? Rickman's perfect for me.
Yeah, well, the first time you hear the Tim Roth story, you sort of go, yeah, I can see exactly why they were thinking that at the time. But once you've seen Alan Rickman do it, the notion it could be anyone else is...
it's ridiculous. Not.
The caliber of the cast is amazing. Like, they have Julie Walters for like 2 lines as Molly Weasley. And it's...
but she has like very little in it, and we'll get to this when we get to this. But her big finale moment in Deathly Hallows Part 2 is like so subtly built throughout the films, and you're like, yes, yes, Molly. Speaking of a Weasley, I couldn't help but think of this when I watched this back, and this is the last thing that I've written down for my Philosopher's Stone. Percy Weasley is insufferable. As I'm head boy, I'm a prefect, get out of my way. I was like, get off. Who are you? Absolutely insufferable. And it took me a couple of films to remember and realize that it was a Weasley. I thought it was just like a knock around head boy, and then all of a sudden he's having
Percy
breakfast
Weasley
with him.
Gets a real raw deal in these movies, because I noticed this in my rewatch. I'm not sure I'd noticed before how much he's in the later films. He's actually in them quite a lot. He doesn't get to speak, but he's in them.
I'm over here. I'm in the background.
He's always there in the background. And I can only assume, I didn't write the actor's name down, but I can only assume he filmed a lot of stuff for those films that just did not make it in. Because there's quite a considered Percy Weasley arc in the books.
Oh, really? What's that then?
Oh, yeah. Well, so he rises up to be prefect and head boy and stuff, and then he goes to work for Cornelius Fudge.
Right.
And so that obviously puts him at odds with Harry and his family when Voldemort comes back and the Ministry's against him. And then there's this whole thing about Percy being basically like a special advisor to the politician. Right. Being a bit slimy, and then getting a big moment in the last one where he comes back to join the Battle of Hogwarts.
Because they've still taken that character development then and included it slightly in the films and subtly in the films.
Yeah, because you see, so when they do like the newspaper montages in like Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince, he's always stood next to Fudge.
Yeah,
in those scenes, but he never gets to say anything. Because
there's a couple of things in this that I wish they'd done a little bit more with. So like John Cleese's Nearly Headless Nick, I wouldn't have minded seeing him again somewhere. I remember reading it. It was one of the only times that this has ever happened to me because I'm not a big reader. But I remember reading the book and then watching the film and going, well, they didn't include Peeves. And usually I'm not part of the audience where they go, it's not as good as the book because they didn't include this in the book. Whereas this is the only one where I just thought Peeves, I think, would have been a good inclusion. But again, maybe it makes sense that they took him out.
Well, did you know who they cast as Peeves?
No.
Rick Mayall.
Oh. See, now that's just got...
Which would have been incredible.
I've got dead Fred floating around Hogwarts in my head.
Yeah. Oh, I think they shot some stuff with him. I think that's right. But
that wouldn't surprise me.
Obviously, it didn't make it into any of the films.
Because he's in the game. And you just think, surely you've lifted everything from the film and put it into the game. Yeah. So surely there must have been.
But I mean, you can see why. Because the thing about those first two films is they're bloody long.
Yeah. Yes.
They're like 2 hours 40, both of those first two films. And you look at how slim the books are. And then you get to like Order of the Phoenix, which is the longest book, and it's either the shortest or the second shortest film.
It always amazes me how, since I've worked in the cinema, actually, that I've had this perspective, that such long films can make so much money.
Yeah.
Because I remember when Skyfall came out when I was working at the cinema, and they were like, everyone just wants to watch it. What are we going to do? It's already on 7 screens. What are we going to do? Right, well, we've cancelled screenings of that kids' film in this afternoon. We're just having to plow it on everything. And you just think...
that was the big thing when The Wolf of Wall Street came out.
Yeah.
Because that was such a conundrum for cinemas, because it's 3 hours long, and it's an 18. So you put that on half of your screens because everyone wants to see it, and no one can get into those screens because
you turn them all away.
Yeah.
It's like, give us 90-minute films and you can be on all day. Don't do that. I mean, what we're going to do at the end of what would be the second episode is rank them. But for me, I think I've got more of an affinity for the first one, and that's why it will end up higher on my list, I think, because it came around about a certain time. And actually, to sort of maybe go off on a bit of a sidetrack, we've done a podcast recently on historically set top 10s. And what we mean by that is a film that's set prior to when it was released or when it was made. And my number one was Boyhood. And it was one of the moments where I just gushed about how much I love Boyhood.
Yeah.
And it's because, to me, it reflects my life so perfectly on film, and it's so relatable. And one of the things in it was they throw in a scene of, and again, this is Richard Linklater's mastery of manipulating exactly what we would recognize as time frames by including a Harry Potter sequence where he goes and picks up his copy of, I think it's Order of the Phoenix, or it might be something else. And I
doesn't
just
he
thought,
dress up? He dresses up, doesn't he?
yeah, they're all dressed up and they all go and pick the books up, you know. And I just thought, yeah, I remember that time of my life, and I remember that time of my life, and I think this is again probably why Philosopher's Stone is high on my ranking, as we will come to in just a little bit.
I think it's a really interesting film because it's a really faithful adaptation of the book.
Yes.
The characters, I think what happened in some of the later films, particularly with Dumbledore, once they cast Michael Gambon to replace Richard Harris, I think that the characters became film characters, and so they shifted a bit which is natural, and you'd expect that. But in this first one, they are very much as written, I think, these characters.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
It's always interesting to go back and see Richard Harris as Dumbledore, I think, because he's so stoic and so kind of like, everyone's going to listen to me because I'm the principal. You get that really pivotal scene where he just shouts silence and it just echoes through the Great Hall. But then later on, and we'll come to this when we get to Azkaban, that Michael Gambon just instantly looks much more youthful as Dumbledore. And it'd be difficult to imagine Richard Harris doing all the more athletic stuff that happened later on.
Yeah, there's a part of that. And also, I think it's strange because obviously the casting decision was driven by the fact Richard Harris passed away and not by any, artistic decision. But you wonder how Richard Harris would have done, not just the physical demands, which obviously are pretty huge in some of those later films, but the fact that Dumbledore becomes a less likable character. He just does in the second half of the series. He is keeping things from Harry deliberately. He is, being a bit more, at times mischievous, but sometimes just flat out unlikable. And, Richard Harris is doing the mystery thing. It's a kind of twinkly mystery, a sort of, avuncular type mystery.
Like whereas, when he gives him that little wink at the end of... Yeah.
Whereas this is, later in the series, Dumbledore has secrets and, certainly by the time you get to the seventh one and the things that the films still didn't manage to fit in, despite the fact they did 2 films, all the stuff about Dumbledore's past, which presumably we're now going to get in Fantastic Beasts, one would expect.
Oh yeah, it seems to be going that way.
But yeah, so I'm fascinated to know what Richard Harris would have done had he still been around for those later films.
Definitely. So we'll get into Chamber of Secrets then. So this was the year after. The novel was the year after as well. We're still directed by Chris Columbus at this time. David Heyman obviously riding the wave of producing all of these films. And this is obviously the second year. And the heir of Salazar Slytherin opens the Chamber of Secrets, unleashing a monster that petrifies the school's descendants. A lot of the cast returned for the second film, and we had the additions of Kenneth Branagh and Jason Isaacs. Do we do the cringy thing and say hello to him? Yeah, okay.
I think we have to.
Hello to Jason Isaacs. It's not even cringy. It just comes straight into my head every time I see him.
When my other half and I were watching the film, I had to say it out loud. You just it feels wrong not to when you see it.
It does feel wrong not to. You are totally right. And it was the last film to feature Richard Harris as Albus Dumbledore, like we've just mentioned. They kind of spread the wings a little bit. Some of this was shot on the Isle of Man, which was quite interesting to look at. And obviously, again, a huge success. 879 million worldwide, the second highest grossing film of 2002, behind that dastardly Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which I remember that period of my life where it was just like, Harry or Lord of the Rings, which one do you like? You can't like both. What are you going to do?
This will shock people once I've claimed to be a film critic. To this day, I have not seen the second 2 Lord of the Rings films.
Oh, really?
I've seen Fellowship, and I've seen all 3 of the Hobbit movies for my sins. But I've not seen it. And I think part of it is because I just missed the window. Because at the time they came out, I was so fervently Team Potter.
Not watching that other thing.
It's the same reason I didn't really listen to McFly for a long time. Because I was Team Busted.
Oh, there we go. That's it.
And it felt for a long time like one or the other.
Because we talk about this a lot on the podcast, where why haven't you seen X film? Why haven't you seen Y film? And for me, a lot of the John Hughes 80s stuff, which I've now gone back to because I did the pod with James King and all that kind of stuff, was because I was brought up on Disney. So I watched all the Disney animated classics, and you kind of big 80s things like Gremlins was one that I'd only caught up with recently. Just missed it. Just completely missed it. And I think that's exactly the reason why.
And then with Lord of the Rings, once you've missed it, it's 9 hours worth of films.
Well, this is it. You've got a slog on your hands straight after that.
But I've got no leg to stand on because I watched how many hours of Harry Potter in the last week. So
you could have scores it in there. The first, for me, actually, Lord of the Rings. Side note: the first one is the best one for me. Anyway, yeah. So you've peaked.
I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah.
Blown away. I liked it.
Chamber of Secrets was also.
It's no Harry Potter. He says, hiding under.
No, not gonna do it. It was nominated for many awards. This is Chamber of Secrets, including the BAFTA for Best Production Design, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. So there's a couple of I'd almost found a routine of my notes here. So this is enter Dobby and Lockhart, Ginny and Arthur Weasley. Okay. Dobby, yeah. Like, are you a Dobby? Like, I can't even think of the word sympathizer.
Dobby sympathizer. Yes, I am.
Because when we'll get to it when we get to part one, but I think it bothers me how that is the emotional hook of the film, because nothing happens in Deathly Hallows Part 1 apart from him dying at the end.
But let me tell you this, doesn't matter how many times I see it. Doesn't matter how many times I see it.
Oh, Tom.
Absolutely wrecks me. It's the end of Paddington 2 and Dobby dying are the two.
On par with each other.
Yeah, David Heyman is involved every time.
This is it. He owns the keys to your emotion.
He does. He does.
Gilderoy and Lockhart, Kenneth Branagh, I think, is a revelation. And I love his, he has no idea what he's doing. So, Harry breaks his arm and he goes, Brachiam, El Mendo. And it's like, even we can go, what? That's not a spell? What are you on about?
It's because he does it earlier as well when he releases the Pixies and he just babbles some stuff
You have no idea what you're doing.
My favorite thing about Lockhart, Kenneth Branagh, just incredible in that. I'm because he reappears in the Order of the Phoenix book.
Okay.
He has a cameo because they go to when Arthur Weasley is attacked by the snake. Mm-hmm. They go to visit him in hospital in the book. And at the hospital, they meet Neville's parents, who were obviously tortured into insanity. And they bump into Lockhart, who still can't remember anything because of the end of Chamber of Secrets. So I was really sad that was not in the films, because it would have allowed us Kenneth Branagh being bewildered again, which is so...
Could have had a Kenneth Branagh cameo.
So wonderful. It's an incredible performance. And the thing I like about the Lockhart character is the brilliant work that Richard Harris and Maggie Smith and Alan Rickman do. Whenever he claims to do something, they all know he's lying. Every single one of them. You can see it written across their faces, but they just let it play out. Even when at the very end, they're sending him in to save a student from the heir of Slytherin. And still, none of them thinks to say, actually, let the adults take over now.
Is he the best person to be doing this? No, probably not. We're paying him an awful lot of money, though.
Yeah, because I think when I saw it as a kid, I think my assumption was that they were all fooled by him.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
But watching it now, it's obviously transparent that they
it's that
know
knowing
he's an idiot.
That... So I think this starts off with a couple of laughs, actually, especially with the flying car. I remember that set piece quite vividly from being a kid.
Yeah, Uncle Vernon falling out the window.
Yes, of course, yeah. Much darker than the first, I think. I think this is really going down that, I think, territory where we ended up with, where it was almost YA before YA was a big thing. I think this one, I think we might disagree on this a little bit, as we've already mentioned off podcast. That it starts well, but for me it teeters a little bit. I think the polyjuice potion stuff is a little bit laboured, and the inclusion of Aragog. It's almost like, do you remember the forest from the first one? Well, there's a big spider, and now we're back in. And then I really I remember as a kid, I would have been 12 when this came out, the whole Tom Marvel or Riddle thing and how it's an anagram for I am Lord Voldemort, just being like, whoa, you've blown my mind. But I really like that because it develops this lore and this myth around Voldemort. And the one thing I love about films, as we're going back and watching, not just the Harry Potter ones, but anything, is if you build a world, if you make me believe that there's something that exists outside of this 90 minutes, to a 2-hour film that I'm watching. And that does that, because I almost certainly believe then that there is this character that came before and something's going to happen afterwards. And that just built that perfectly.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. And I think, because at the moment, it's almost quite hard to like Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling and everything she now is. And so I've grappled with that quite a lot. And a lot of people are finding it very easy to dismiss Harry Potter, partly because of her and partly because of the Fantastic Beasts films, which obviously have their shortcomings. For me, I'm still on board. I'm still enjoying them. But I think the thing that makes me still love everything about this is that world that, for all of her failings as a person and indeed as a writer, the world she creates is just incredible. And I believe, like you said, that there was a time before and a time after this story. And I love exploring it. I love all of the nonsense stuff. And, I believe that she has a lot of this world in her head. We can quibble about in the Fantastic Beast, the second one, when she decides that Nagini the snake was always a woman.
Oh, yeah.
And then, she'll tweet something mental like the infamous one about how wizards used to just poo on the floor and vanish it.
My God.
But at the same time, I just love being in the world, and I love that it has that depth to it. And, one of the sadnesses of the films is they didn't have time for the real Voldemort lore that comes in Half-Blood Prince with all the, because there's a lot of memory stuff in it. Right, we get a couple of them in the film, but the book is full of, like, you see him going to meet the witch who owned Hufflepuff's cup and Slytherin's locket.
Oh, right, okay.
There's loads of stuff about his parents and the way they got together and his dislike for his father, who was a muggle, and all of that stuff is in there. And the thing I like about the anagram is that Voldemort's called different things in different languages to make the anagram work.
Yeah. I think I've seen this. Yeah, that in all the different books.
Because the anagram has to work.
Yeah, of course it does. How are we going to figure this out? Tell me about your first time watching Chamber. Then, what were you? So 8? Then I'm assuming.
Yeah, 8 or 9. And again, it's one of my really early formative cinema memories. In fact, the first really clear memory of a moment I have, because there's the scene really early on when when he ends up in Nocturne Alley, when he messes up the flu powder. And in Borgin and Burke's, there's the hand. It's like a jump scare.
Oh, yeah.
I remember my brother, who's 2 or 3 years younger than me, in the cinema, when that happened, sweets everywhere.
Oh, my God.
Because the jump scare completely got him hook, line, and sinker. So, yeah, I remember that really vividly. And I don't know if maybe that's part of it, but I have such a fondness for Chamber. I almost think it's the perfect marriage between the lightness of the early films and the darkness of the later ones.
Okay.
Because I think some of the stuff in the chamber at the end, particularly the basilisk stuff, not only is it aged visually so well, but it's really scary and it's really tense. And Daniel Radcliffe is giving it both barrels in the middle of it as an action hero, being however old he was, 12, 11 when he was shooting it. It's pretty incredible stuff. And I think it is almost like the perfect union of the two kind of halves of the series.
I think to mention something that maybe I've overlooked so far, Quidditch. They're always a huge thing for every film, apart from Prisoner of Azkaban. Where it's
Prisoner of Azkaban, you get one Quidditch scene, you're not allowed to see anything.
Yeah,
because it's in the rain.
Where I was just like, I'm really looking forward to what they do with Quidditch, and that was the theme going in every single time. It was like, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to this. And I think again, games, just being able to play a Quidditch match, and I mean, I'm not that I'm not on board with it. I don't fully understand the people that are playing Quidditch in real life.
No. There's a lot of things I would do for Harry Potter. I think that might be a step too far, even for me.
Not even running after a man in yellow shorts who's the golden snitch. I don't know if that's true. There was a Bradley Walsh thing on ITV and it looked like that. So, but fair play to
Just
you
like
all.
the Quidditch scenes in this one, I think particularly are fantastic. The chase with him and Malfoy, both going after the snitch with the bludger like barreling after them. That's great stuff.
Oh,
It's a
Tom
great
Felton's
set piece.
Malfoy as well. Like he is, you hate him, and that's exactly what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, is this the one? I don't think it is the one. There's one where they're all wearing badges. I think it's Goblet of Fire. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Goblet of Fire. Yeah, we'll come to that when we come to
Yeah, yeah.
that.
No,
But it's
it's
just
just
like,
I think the Tom Felton is another person who doesn't get enough credit for these films because
yeah,
he's
no, he
just
really
wonderful.
doesn't.
And like
Mm,
he finds the thing is, it's very easy to play that character one note, but he finds a different shade of kind of loathsomeness in every film.
yeah, yeah,
Like in the first one, it's like it's all like power and I feel like I'm the ruler of the school, even though I'm a first year because I'm this, that, and the other. And then in the second one, it's the money because he
yeah.
buys his way onto the Quidditch team,
Hmm.
and it's all of that stuff. And he's Snape's favorite because they have the dueling scene, which is just brilliant.
And he's all quite pompous, and he's all like,
Yeah,
he is again the embodiment of Slytherin. He's a slimy little,
yeah.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
because that's the thing in Azkaban, that's the other layer is that he's just a slimy little whatever in
I
Azkaban. And so that's why you get that huge amount of catharsis when Hermione just lamps him in the
was
nose.
gonna say, what's the line? You foul loathsome evil little cockroach, and
Yes,
then bang in the face.
just
Um,
just incredible.
let's move
But yeah,
straight
no,
into Azkaban then, unless you
I
want
have
to.
yeah, no, I have so much love for Chamber. I think it's
Yeah.
really well constructed. I mean, I think the thing just before we move off Columbus,
Hmm.
I think the thing in those two is the way they set the groundwork visually for the films to come, because obviously so many of those sets would be used again. You know,
Yep.
that's what you see when you go to the studio tour, and the production design team deserves so much credit, and that's why
Hmm.
you were saying they were Oscar nominated for this one, and it's that stuff is just brilliant. The level of set builds is just incredible. The fact they just almost took over Leavesden for a decade for, to make these movies, just
And now
incredible.
they've just put a different sign on the door and just
Yeah.
gone, come in and have a look. All right then. So let's get into Prisoner of Azkaban. So this was 2004. So we had a skip of a year. So directed by Alfonso Cuarón. So we have now moved on from Chris Columbus, the third installment, and this is mainly to do with obviously Harry's third year at Hogwarts. He's informed that a prisoner named Sirius Black has escaped from Azkaban and intends to kill him. And at this point, the production had switched to an 18-month cycle. Cuarón, I'm assuming I'm saying that right, was selected as a director from a shortlist that also included Kenneth Branagh, which I don't think, as much as I would have liked to see him do one, I think the darkness comes from Cuarón's vision of
Oh,
this.
certainly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the
Um,
interesting element of Cuarón is the story that he initially turned it down,
yeah, I
and then he
remember
rang
seeing this.
Guillermo del Toro and said, "I've just been offered Harry Potter, and I'm going to say no." And Guillermo del Toro went, I think words that we shouldn't say on a family podcast." But he basically said, "You idiot, do it."
I love Del Toro.
And
I
so
think it's,
that's why he went to do it, and it is very because obviously you've got Cuarón, del Toro, and Alejandro Iñárritu, and like this group of Mexican filmmakers who were buddies, and so you can feel that coming through in Azkaban, and it does make you sad about the fact Guillermo del Toro never got to make his Hobbit films.
definitely. Yes, 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 yes. So we get the original cast back, or the majority of them anyway, with the additions of Gary Oldman, David Thewlis, and Emma Thompson. This was also the first appearance of Michael Gambon as Albus Dumbledore due to the death of Richard Harris in 2002. A lot more shooting at Leavesden, but then as well, they'd gone to different places like Scotland and more specifically in central London. I remember we went to a castle in Edinburgh when I was about 13, and it was where they shot the Wampin Willow bit. And you could just tell straight away it was just like, the kind of side edge, and there was just a huge tree at the end. And obviously the castle had gone, come and see where they filmed Harry Potter. And they didn't tell you which bit of Harry Potter they filmed. So we went in expecting, like I'm saying to my sister, like, we're going to see the Great Hall, we're going to see all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh no, it's that tree. It's the tree that's over there. Yeah, I remember now, but yeah.
It's funny because it's such a testament to the power of those films that even locations that were used for like single bits are just so memorable. Like when I was at school, they took a group of us to go and have a look around Oxford University. They had high hopes for me. I'm very sorry. Sorry to the school about where I've ended up. So they took us around Oxford University, and there's a square in Oxford University, which is where they shot the scene in Goblet of Fire where Malfoy gets turned into a ferret.
Oh yeah, okay.
All of those scenes that are in that courtyard were shot at Oxford University, and the minute you see that courtyard, you know instantly. They don't need to tell you that's where it was because you just go, "That's that bit."
So this one was released in May of 2004, so shifting massively away from that kind of November release date. And it grossed 796 million worldwide, second highest grossing film of 2004. A lot of praise for Cuarón's direction and lead actor performances. And again, it's credited with having a massive change in tone and the directorial style, often considered by critics and fans as being one of the best, and was nominated for the 2 Academy Awards, Best Original Score and Best Visual Effects in 2004. So here again, I've written enter. You've got Sirius Black, Lupin, Madame Trelawney, the Dementors, Michael Gambon's Dumbledore, much more animated than the stoic version that we got with Richard Harris. This is just where it starts getting a little bit darker, is what I've written. And I love the horror aesthetic and the tone of it. Because again, I think for me, I would have been 14, really getting into my films around about that time. 2004, 2005 period of time is a big sort of unique time frame for me where I was really seeing everything that I think formed the person who I am and the teacher of film that I am and the things I often go back to. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I said in the class, I'm going to show you a film from a couple of years ago, 2005. None of them were born at that point. So I totally regret what I said at that point. And I've just ended this with one thing, and we can go into much more detail. Let's just face it, this is the best one.
It is the best one. You're not going to get any disagreement from me.
No, I can't. I don't know what else to say. It's just great. And everything that they've put together with it, like Lupin and Black are 2 of my favourite characters in all of it. And that is even saying, and I think I realised this when I rewatched it. I'm wondering if you did as well. We actually don't get a lot of Black in these films.
No.
And that really surprised me. Like, because he's burly in Goblet. I think Goblet is the one where he just comes up as the face in the fire.
Yeah.
And then he's in Order of the Phoenix a little bit, and then he dies.
Yeah, he's in it at the very beginning. He has another scene in the fire.
Yeah.
And then he appears for 5 minutes to die at the end.
And I just thought, like, I expected so much more. Like, for whatever reason, in my head, I had it as Sirius Black is in a lot of these films.
Yeah.
Not 3, if you could really count them as 3.
It's interesting because he's such an emotional presence for Harry. And so because we see everything through Harry's eyes, whenever we see Sirius, like you think of Order of the Phoenix, when they first get into headquarters and they're talking in the kitchen and Harry just sort of sees Sirius through all the bodies.
Yes. Yeah.
And they have this moment and you realise the emotional significance of it immediately.
That kind of look of affection that they've got for each other. Yeah.
And I mean, if you've read the books, it's even stronger because obviously the Goblet of Fire, he's not really in the film, but they are like pen pals throughout the book. It's hilarious. There's one scene where they send him a letter and they write Sirius Black on the envelope. Like, this is a time when the newspaper is calling him a mass murderer still.
Where's my stamp? There you go.
Yeah, because in the books there's this whole clandestine thing about how they're doing code names and sending different owls and
the whole like Padfoot thing. And yeah,
exactly. But none of that comes across in the film because I guess they just thought it was a pain. So they just.
I love the Dementors.
Azkaban is wonderful. The thing I love, I guess, is we talk a lot, and I think we've probably done it in this, about the gradual shift to darkness. But it isn't really a gradual shift.
We're dark. Let's go.
They make Azkaban, and it's just a horror film, like you know. And whoever's idea it was, whether it was David Heyman or someone else, to go, who should we get to do the next one? Oh, I like the guy who made Y Tu Mama Tambien. Let's get him to do our special effects blockbuster. No, it's wonderful. Everything about it is wonderful. I love the aesthetic of it. They make such fundamental changes as well. So there are next to no Hogwarts robes in this one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They just wear teenager clothes almost constantly throughout the entire movie, which I think is really interesting. And in the subsequent films, you saw sort of a combination of. So sometimes they'd be in sort of civilian clothes, and sometimes they'd be wearing the robes. But I mean, I may be wrong. I'm prepared to be corrected, but I don't think they wear Hogwarts clothes at all in Azkaban.
I don't think so.
No, which I think is really really interesting, and it marks such a stylistic change for the series because they weren't so wedded to the visual style of Hogwarts, I guess. And so when you got the scenes, the early scenes, and then when they go to Hogsmeade and stuff like that, and they're just being normal teenagers.
Yeah,
that makes more sense than if they're in flowing black robes and witches' hats.
yeah. Because weirdly for me, and I think looking back on this again as a teacher, because this was the first time I think that I'd done them all the way through, probably since I qualified actually, and you get Philosopher's Stone, which is year 7, and it's look at them, they're all so small, and they're all going to go and do this, and then Chamber of Secrets is year 8, and it's like, they've got a little bit more attitude in them this time.
Yeah.
This is year 9, and I'm picking my GCSE options, and I'm getting a little bit more freedom. And weirdly, and I can't imagine, although if they did, it's a masterstroke, that they ever sat down and thought, well, we've got to replicate the kind of school system in these films, and we've got to accentuate that through the things that we allow the children to do. And that by the time we get to Order of the Phoenix, they're all going to be in year 11. And I can't imagine that they ever did that. But for me, it sticks out so much. Yeah. And I think that's because I see children of all of those ages on a daily basis when I'm in school. And it just, for whatever reason, again, easily relatable.
And it's really fascinating because then Half-Blood Prince is like year 12, so it's all like the in-betweeners. It's all about sex.
Because once we get to that, it's like there's a girl over there, she's looking at you. Like,
I mean, it's J.K. Rowling's version of sex, so it's very chaste. It's all like who's snogging who. No one has loved the word snogging more than J.K. Rowling.
My God. But yeah, I mean, I love the Dementors, and I always remember every single time, and it kind of ruins it a little bit for me, is that me and my mate made this really, it's not even a joke, it's just something stupid that we said to each other, where the Dementors appear, and then Lupin jumps out, and he does the Patronus, and they disappear, and then every single time Harry does something, Lupin's always there ready to go, here, eat this, and he gives him a little bit of chocolate. For whatever reason, that reminded us as one of those old 15p Dairy Milk bars that you could get that were really thin chocolate, and we just go, he's here with his Dairy Milk. He's got one of those. Another one of those.
I know exactly the ones you mean. They were long, and then they had 2 really thin panels and a slightly thicker panel in the middle.
Yes, exactly. And he just go, there you go, you'll need that. Here's your 15p bar of chocolate.
I turned to my other half when we were watching this one. I said, I need to make friends with Lupin. The dude's always got chocolate in his pocket.
Do you need me? I'm here. Let's go. But yeah, it's weird, and it's always weird when we do these podcasts where we have much more to say about the ones that we have issues with or nitpicky things with, but the ones that we love, we just kind of go, it's just great, isn't it? Let's just what more can we say?
It's just they do a really stupid time travel thing, and it works.
I was about to say that even with the narrative of it, you believe it. And I think actually, again, watching it back, this is the bad thing about watching films and being a film studies teacher, is that you go, that'd be really good for that lesson. Can I be bothered putting clips together and throwing it in there somewhere? No, I can't.
It's interesting because the thing about time travel in movies is it's the Back to the Future rule. Keep it simple, and commit, and then it will work. So if you sat and tried to dissect the time travel in Azkaban, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But because they just commit to it, it works. And because you love these characters by now, you're looking at the incredible creature design on the werewolf. There's so many moving parts in that finale because you've got the Sirius Black stuff coming to fruition. You've got Lupin coming along to help him. You've got, is Lupin a good guy or a bad guy? You've got the Pettigrew reveal. Snape's there because reasons.
Why not?
The movie's hilarious because the movie forgets that Snape's there. So they all leave the Shrieking Shack and Snape's not there. So he's just lying on that bed where he got disarmed.
Oh, I think it's this one,
so
or it might even be Goblet, where there's a point where Snape he's there as a teacher. They're doing their exams, and he just grabs the heads and puts.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, this is the Snape role for this film, then.
Yeah, well, because they spend the first 2 films just assuming everything bad is because of Snape. And like,
and like, oh, what do you mean? There's another villain?
Yeah. So that's all really fascinating. But the design of this one is so impressive, though, and
Yeah.
you know, it brought in things that would be stalwart throughout the franchise, whether it's Sirius Black's appearance, whether it's the Dementors, the sort of darker aesthetic. I feel like the geography of the castle is established more in this one, and kind of stays here. I feel like there are a lot of changes in aesthetic between this one and the second one, but it kind of holds true to this one.
Yeah, because you really get an idea, don't you, of like where things are and where everything is in sort of relation to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you picked up Lupin as a character you particularly like, because he's kind of ill-served by the movies. He doesn't get. He's much like Sirius Black, I suppose. He doesn't really get the screen time he arguably deserves, given how important he is. You know, both him and Black appear to Harry when he uses the Resurrection Stone at the end of Deathly Hallows 2. And you don't really get that level of investment in Lupin. But one of the things the book really establishes, and Azkaban, I hesitate to say the worst book, but it's probably the weakest book.
Okay.
Which is, you know, interesting given how great the film is. But there's a lot in the book about how Lupin is first and foremost just a really great teacher. He's just brilliant at teaching. Like, in Goblet of Fire, when they do the task with the lake, in the book, obviously, there's far more different creatures that he comes across while he's in the lake. And almost all of them are ones he was taught about by Lupin.
Right, okay.
And that's why he was going to win the lake task before everything happened.
Right. Okay.
Because he knows about all of those creatures and how to get past them, because Lupin taught him.
Whereas instead with this, it's like Gillyweed from Neville and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, there's one scene of Lupin doing a lesson with the boggart and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Other than that, and you know, Lupin in that lesson is very much the cool teacher. Like,
yeah, he is. He's like, all the desks are gone to the side. There's no writing.
Puts a bit of music on so they can do their practical task.
Let's see what you're scared of.
It's like my art teacher in like year 7 or year 8 who would just give us a long art task to do, and then would just put on the Harry Potter audiobooks.
Oh, nice.
So, you know, I've probably got like a Pavlov's dog response to, you know, whenever paints come out, I expect to hear Stephen Fry's voice. Like
come on, Steve-O. Like, oh yeah, those are the days. Those were the days of lessons. Nothing like that's happening anymore. I wish. Right. Right. Last one for this little 4 then. So Goblet of Fire. So this time directed by Mike Newell. Again, Heyman's still here, giving us the consistent production. This one obviously is the 4th year of Hogwarts now, so now he's in year 10, just to keep on that trend.
Keep that going,
keep that one going. And he's chosen by the Goblet of Fire to compete in the Triwizard Tournament. This is the first of the series to receive a PG-13 certificate in the US and a 12A in the UK. Filming began in early 2004. 5 days after its release, it had grossed over 102 million at the North American box office, which is the third highest 5-weekend tally of any Harry Potter film, behind some of the later ones. And again, immensely successful, 896 million worldwide, the highest grossing of 2005, and the 6th highest grossing in the series. Nominated for the Academy Award for Best Art Direction and won the award for Best Production Design. Also released in IMAX, I think, because Azkaban won as well. And it is one of the best reviewed installments within the series, being praised for high level of maturity, sophistication of its characters, plotline, tone, screenplay, and performances of the lead actors. This has always been, I think, one of my favorites. And I just think it's such a strong entry to the franchise because, and I think as well, it comes down to maybe the narrative structure of it, of just using the Triwizard Tournament to anchor this kind of, well, he's done the first one, now he's got to do the second one, now he's got to do this one. And then your finale is, oh, this is the last thing that he has to do. And obviously with this one, you get Rafe finds his Voldemort for the first time. The Death Eaters, again, are still around. was mixing them up with Dementors. Brendan Gleeson's Mad Eye Moody and David Tennant as Barty Grouch. Weird thing, slightly funny thing. My mum is still freaked out by David Tennant because of this film. Because she she loves Harry Potter, and she saw him as Barty Grouch, and she just thought, he frightens me. He frightens the life out of me.
This being the movie where David Tennant acts exclusively with his tongue.
Yeah, it just goes but like, I don't know if she's seen Broadchurch, but like, he's not scary in that one. It's fine.
He was Doctor Who for how many years?
Yeah,
around this time, actually.
So with the Triwizard Tournament, you get the Ball Batten's Academy of Magic, which is represented by Fleur Delacour, the Drumstang Victor Crumb, and to me, again, me and my mate who made the same Dairy Milk joke, this is just an absolute amazing introduction. The way that they come in and just hammer the sticks on the floor, we were all for that.
It is a bit Route One. Like, women be dancing and doing attractive moans, men be doing flips and fire.
Bang on the floor.
What do men like? I don't know, somersaults?
Loud noises. Actually, before I go into the next little bit, I really like, just to go back to Quidditch, the Quidditch World Cup stuff at the beginning. Because again, that felt massively believable. Like, look at how many people are in this thing, and they're all, because it's the World Cup,
Okay, so I feel like I should say I don't like Goblet of Fire.
Really? I was like running off with that, and I thought Tom's agreeing with everything here.
I know, and I feel like I should cut that off at this point. No, the thing is, as you said in your introduction, it is one of the better reviewed ones, and the sort of consensus is that it's a really, really good one. And I feel like, and I don't like to do this much, I feel like the book reader in me has a problem with Goblet of Fire.
Okay.
Because Goblet of Fire, almost everything plot-wise is in the film.
Right.
But Goblet of Fire is a very sort of internal and charactery and quite angsty at times book.
Okay.
And a lot of that's not in the film. And I feel like it suffers as a result, because it's a bit like, now we do this, now we do this, now we do this, now we do this. So like, within 10 minutes, the Quidditch World Cup is done and they're at school.
Yeah.
That's like the first third of the book.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
There's so much stuff. There's a lot of really fun character stuff at the World Cup before it all hits the fan. There's some great stuff with Fred and George, who don't get almost anything to do in any of the films. But they have a big arc in Goblet of Fire, which culminates by the end of Goblet of Fire, they are given Harry's Triwizard winnings.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that's how they open their shop.
Right.
Because in the films, suddenly they've just got a shop. And you're like,
yeah,
where did this poor family get the money for prime Diagon Alley real estate?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there's a whole thing where they make a bet on the World Cup. They make an absurd bet on the World Cup where I think they bet that Crumb catches the snitch, but Ireland win, which obviously is very rare. But that is what happens.
Request a bet.
Yeah. But that is what happens. And so they theoretically win all this money, but I think they're screwed over by Ludo Bagman, who's this guy from the Ministry who's not in any of the films. So there's loads of stuff at the World Cup, and then there's loads of more internal stuff while they're at the school and while the tournament's going on. And then the tasks themselves, the dragon task is pretty much as written from what I remember.
Right.
But as I sort of alluded to with the Lupin discussion, there's a lot more to the lake task. And the maze in the films is nonsense. I'm sorry to Goblet of Fire fans, but the maze in the films is nonsense. There's this whole thing where the maze itself is the villain is, I'm sorry, but they just couldn't, they didn't have the budget to put all of the magical creatures in the maze. That's what's happened.
All right. So what happens
in the book, the maze is brilliant. So it's like every time you like turn a corner, almost there's like a magical creature that you've got to like get past, or so there's this whole thing where there's a creature that Hagrid invents called the Blast-Ended Scroot, which they're like in their Care of Magical Creatures lessons throughout that book. They're like raising them, and they're really unpredictable, and they make fire and they explode and stuff. And then there's a big one of those in the maze at the end, so that pays that off. there's a sphinx which he has to solve a riddle to get past.
Okay.
There's a lot of riddling in the books that doesn't make it into the films. So like even in Philosopher's Stone, they kind of make it out in the film that the task where Hermione gets to shine is the Devil's Snare.
Yeah.
But in the book, she gets this whole thing where there's, because, they mentioned that Snape provided one of the things protecting the stone.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really see that in the film.
Yeah.
Because the thing he provides is this riddle where they have to find out which potion to drink to get through to the next room.
Right, okay.
By like a logic problem.
Yeah.
And so that's what Hermione is able to do because she's the logical one.
So it's not just Devil's Snare.
So, because they even when Dumbledore does his little spiel at the end where he like trolls them by just making Gryffindor win at the end, he says like for like displaying outstanding nerve and logic and stuff. But that we don't really see that. She just goes, "Ron, stop wriggling around, you idiot!" And so yeah, the maze. I think they just gut it in the movie, and it's obviously for budget reasons because those magical creatures cannot come cheap. But it just doesn't ring true when they're like being fought by the maze itself, and Dumbledore does that mental spiel at the start about how people aren't themselves in the maze, and it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
I wonder if it is a reader's issue then.
And so I think, I genuinely, so perhaps it isn't the film's fault, and perhaps I'm being unfair, but for me, I just find Goblet of Fire difficult for that reason. Not to mention the infamous Michael Gambon moment where he asks Harry whether he puts his name in the Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
By running at him and saying, "Did you put your name in that Goblet of Fire?" Which in the book, and I haven't checked this, but in the book, that line of dialogue is in the book, but after it says like, "He said calmly."
Oh yeah, clearly. That did not translate to the script.
Yeah, there's a reason that scene is so infamous because it's just nonsense. So yes, I do struggle with Goblet of Fire. I think there are elements of it that are really great. I think the Yule Ball is brilliant.
Yeah. Okay.
I love the musical number. I love the little Ron and Hermione squabbling going on.
Yeah.
I love Daniel Radcliffe's very convincing bewilderment at anything involving dance.
Because I'd actually written down, so like now we're in 4th year, right? So now we're in year 10, and they're naturally trying to figure out relationships.
Yeah.
And I'd pulled a quote of it's like, why do they, as in girls, why do they have to travel in packs? I loved all that kind of stuff to do with it, where it's like, what are these things, these girls? Like, we fought a troll.
They shortchanged the blokes a bit because the thing they frame poor Ron, as this nonsense creature who is fascinated by female arses. And that's I mean, there's a certain amount of that, obviously, but it's not really fair to Ron because the reason Fleur Delacour is so fascinating is because she's part Veela. And a Veela is like, it's sort of like a siren in mythology. Like, men are like drawn to them by their DNA, not because they just happen to be very attractive. And so I feel like...
Whereas he's a bit ugly.
Yeah, I feel like Ron is less of a lech than the film makes him out to be.
Well, the last thing that I'd written down, I think, as probably a bit of a sucker punch, is that Cedric's death is essentially the first death of a hero that we get.
Yeah.
And as much as like, I'm never really a fan of, especially if you've got a series, we'll crowbar in this new character, we'll make you like this new character, and then at the end we're going to kill this character.
Yeah.
It works well enough, I think. And again, like something that I mentioned before about he puts his name in the Goblet of Fire, everyone falls out with him because they feel like he's cheated. And then that really petulant thing of them all wearing badges that says Potter stinks, and those really awful extras that go, "Hey Potter, read the badge." Yes. Like, what are you two doing in here? Get out.
There's a couple of moments in this of it's like, well, I call it Nicholas Hoult theory because of an interview I once did with some of the cast members of the film Tolkien, where Nicholas Hoult played J.R. Tolkien.
Yeah.
And those cast members told me there's a scene where they all play rugby in the film, And these actors I was chatting to, they told me a lot of the extras worked out that if you tackle Nicholas Hoult, you'll get in the movie. and and there's a lot of that in this, whereas if you lean close enough to Daniel Radcliffe with your badge, you get in the movie.
Yeah.
So
someone in the background just inching ever slowly.
Exactly.
That's me, Mum. Look.
There's some serious Nicholas Hoult theory going on in this film.
Yeah. I think one thing that has disheartened me recently, and I don't know if you've been listening as actively as I have. So Commodore Mail, they've recently interviewed Ray Fiennes and reviewed The Dig. And they keep coming back to this fact that when you get Ray Fiennes who enjoys what he's working on, he's a really good interview. And that seems to be the case with The Dig. And then they go, do you remember when we interviewed him for Harry Potter and we asked him what the Elder Wand was? And he had no idea what it was. And it must just be that Ray Fiennes is a fantastic actor because I believe him in this. And now I get this feeling that he has no idea what he's doing.
He's wonderful. When he's like pantomiming for the Death Eaters and he's doing the whole, I can touch you. Oh my God, it's wonderful. And then when they're like doing the duel and Harry hides from him and he just yells like, I want to look at you when I kill you. I want to see the light leave your eyes. It's wonderful. It's so good.
Yeah, but he has no idea what the Elder Wand is.
To be fair though, do you know what the Elder Wand is?
No.
And I ask
you this. I'm not in it.
Yeah, well, no, I ask you this. The only reason I ask you that is because you haven't read the books.
Okay.
And in the films, they barely explain it. You know, if you've seen only the films, you can be absolutely forgiven for not knowing what the Elder Wand is, because there's no reason why you would, because they don't really get into it. Even the like crucial element that leads to the downfall of the villain is not properly explained.
Because it cracks, doesn't it? And then that, right?
Like I think we'll get to it in more detail when we do Deathly Hallows 2.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of wand lore. He says, sounding like the most nerdy person who ever lived. That is not in
to Ollivanders.